Call to order this meeting of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for Thursday, June the 20th, 2024. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district. Today, we are located on the Tecumseh territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tecumseh and respects the territory and land on which we gather today. We have Director Sao attending via Zoom. Vice Chair Smith has had to take her leave, and that is because of the sudden death of former two-term mayor of Logan Lake, Marlon Dosh, who passed away after a courageous battle with cancer on June the 10th. He was a longtime employee of the BC Ministry of Forests and was first elected mayor of Logan Lake in 2008, succeeding Ella Brown. A graveside service is being held at Hillside Cemetery today. And we would like to take this moment to acknowledge his passing, as many of us have known him as he was a long-term member of the TNRD. We would like to acknowledge that tomorrow, June 21st, is National Indigenous Peoples Day. This is a day to grow our knowledge and understanding of Indigenous peoples throughout our region. Many First Nations communities are hosting events, and we encourage everyone to take part in one close to home. I see Director Denise blanking on your last name. This is terrible. That's okay. There's one in Lytton. There are two happening in Clinton. There is one happening at the Ashcroft Band. There's one happening at Hat Creek Ranch on Saturday. And it won't be hard to find what's happening in your region. And most of these are free. They're open to anyone who would like to attend. Parks and Trails Committee. As directed by the board, a Parks and Trails strategic plan is being developed for the TNRD. The strategy will review the regional and community parks and trails service that is currently in place, and it will establish the future role of the park service and will determine how the growth of that function will be managed over the next 10 years. It will be a comprehensive plan that provides direction through vision, mission, goals, strategies, and actions. So as part of this plan development process, a Parks and Trails Strategic Plan Standing Committee is being created to provide board oversight and guidance. This committee will be comprised of 7 board members supported by TNRD staff. Committee is expected to meet 4 times over the next 12 months. Meetings will be a combination of online and in person and will be scheduled in conjunction with TNRD board meetings when possible. The first meeting is tentatively scheduled for July 19th, and the project is slated to run until summer of 2025. So as this is a standing committee, the membership is appointed by the chair. If anyone is interested in being appointed to this committee, please send me your name by the end of day on June 24th. A follow-up email, including the draft terms of reference for the committee, will be sent to the board following today's meeting. Staff are now working with FIT Local Government Consulting on moving ahead with our asset management objectives for 2024. As champions and stewards of the regional district's resources, the board has an important role in asset management, and it is imperative that the board is equipped with the knowledge and skills necessary to effectively set direction and implement policy that helps staff appropriately manage TNRD assets. For this reason, we have organized an online training session on June 27th. A week today. The training will raise awareness about why asset management matters, why it needs to be on the agenda, what is the role of the board, and how to engage with staff about asset management. Library update. The Thompson-Nicola Regional Library is pleased to share the success of its Butterfly Garden program. At the Kamloops and North Kamloops libraries, children delighted as they witnessed the metamorphosis of caterpillars into beautiful adult butterflies. The process was live streamed on the library's website, allowing patrons across the regional district to join in the wonder. Information about this program is available in your folders, along with the new mobile library schedule. The TNRD is looking for feedback for residents in 4 electoral areas about new official community plans that are being created in those areas. The first OCP project is for electoral areas L and P, and the second is for electoral areas M and N. These OCPs will cover all of these respective electoral areas. An OCP is a guiding document for how your community will grow and change over time or how it doesn't grow and change. Respondents can also be entered to win a $100 gift card for a local business of their choosing just by taking a short survey. There are second and third prizes as well. Residents can find more information at tnrd.ca/OCP or by contacting TNRD planning staff. The postcard is also being mailed to all affected addresses. So far, staff have said that the L and P OCP survey has had a strong response, but there has been very little for the M and N OCP. Directors in these electoral areas are asked to spread the word wherever they can. There is also a community survey currently active for Tobiano residents asking for feedback about community planning and what Tobiano residents want to see in their future. There will be a postcard mailed to affected addresses asking for residents to participate by completing a short survey. Loon Lake event. We had a great day at the Loon Lake Fire Hall. How great was it? We ran out of hot dogs and smokies. That's how great it was. And Jamie, Mr. Vieira, I'm still very sorry that you didn't get one. The event was the hosting of the formal grand opening of the new main fire hall, which was actually completed last fall. The grand opening was June 8th. The fire hall was destroyed in the 2017 Elephant Hill wildfire, July 14th of 2017. So 7 years, less a month it took to get the new fire hall open. It certainly is stunning. So a big thank you to TNRD staff, the Loon Lake Fire Hall, and all the residents of the community who turned out. Everyone who came was able to tour the hall, and it says here everyone who came was able to enjoy a smoky or a hot dog. I'm afraid that was not true. The new main fire hall is an incredible asset for Loon Lake, and residents should be very proud of it. If you're ever out that way, it's on the site of the former BC Park, Loon Lake Provincial Park, which was decommissioned 20 odd years ago. Beautiful location, and ask for a tour. I'm sure they'd be very proud to show it to you. SIMP MOU ceremony on July 17th. The TNRD will be formally signing our memorandum of understanding with SIMP on July 17th in Chuchua. This event marks the first MOU to be signed between a community and the TNRD in more than a decade. We're very excited to be able to advance our relationship with SIMP and look forward to many more MOUs with other communities in the future. Coming up, we have a committee of the whole, July 17th, the MOU ceremony. Thursday, July 18th, committee of the whole meeting at 9 a.m., followed by a regular board meeting at 1:30 p.m. Wednesday, August 14th and Thursday, the 15th, there will be an education and board meeting sessions out of town this year in Merritt. You will have regular mail in your blue folders. I have to announce, in the event of an emergency, I don't think we're being set up, but no one's told me, so who knows? If the fire alarm sounds, leave by the safest exit doors, either at the rear of the room to the left or the main entrance. Go down the staircase, exit the building, and assemble in the staff car parking lot at the rear of the Paramount Theater. I feel like I'm a flight attendant. Do not run or use, thank you, Director Blackwell. Do not run or use the elevators. If you have mobility problems, please tell the General Manager of Legislative and Corporate Services who will assist you. And now Director Rain has a few words that he would like to say. Director Rain.
Thank you. Excuse my voice, but I just wish to thank the TNRD and the City of Kamloops for the kind words and cards. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rain. And Mr. Vieira has a few words that he would like to say.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to introduce a couple new staff members who are standing quietly at the back of the room there. So Dave Keller, who you know, who's probably helped you with your email, your phone, and all sorts of things. He's actually moved on to a different position within our organization, so don't worry, he's not going anywhere. So he's our security, our new junior security analyst. So he was so good at his old job, we needed 2 people to replace him. So standing behind him is Alex Mori, you want to give a wave, and Mohan Singh. So they are the new Dave Kellers. So they are available to help you connect with Wi-Fi devices, resetting passwords on your tablets, or any TNRD account issues. And and or helping with your phone, accessing meeting agendas, et cetera. So as Dave is usually wandering around here at the start of meetings, these guys will be here as well. So grab them. And so you won't see Dave as much, or if you ask Dave for help and he passes you along to these guys, that's why. So.
Well, congratulations, Dave, and welcome to our new people who will be invaluable when it comes to figuring out why our things don't work. All right. All right, we move on to, where are we here? Additions to, are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda? Seeing none, then we move on to the minutes of the regular meeting held on May 16th, 2024. Director Ranta, seconded by Director Sarai. Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right, an opportunity for delegations. Item 6.1, we have building infraction 4977 Highway 97 in Scotty Creek. Are the owners here to make representations to the board on this? No, no one here. Then we have item 6.2, building infraction 2210 Blackwater Road, Blackpool. Is there anyone here to speak? Right, if you'd like to approach the podium and make sure the microphone's turned on, and please tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Michelle Devereaux. My daughter Stephanie Devereaux owns the house. I also have a significant financial.
Is the microphone on?
Oh, yeah. What's that? Okay. My daughter Stephanie owns the home. And we were first made aware of the issue with bylaw in June of last year. When we purchased the home, there was no mention of there being any current issues with the home or any of the buildings on the property. The building in question is a duplex cabin that is in close proximity to Man Creek. The previous owners, we've since learned, which is new information. I did speak to Tony Bolton yesterday about the previous owners' families built the cabin apparently in the 80s. And we were also under the understanding from the previous owner that we purchased the home from that the cabins existed in the 80s, 70s to 80s. So what's happened now is Travis attended the first time. My daughter had just returned from Ontario. She was helping me look after my father till he passed. And the very day that she came back from Ontario, she was quite emotional. And Travis, I'm sorry, I don't know his last name. It's Black or something. Does anybody know Travis's last name? He's the bylaw officer who attended. Okay, so he attended and he had requested access to the property to measure the building. And my daughter had asked if he could return at a later time due to the circumstances. He pushed his foot in the door and wouldn't let her close the door and continued to speak with her. And she just asked him to leave again. So he did leave. He came back quite a few months later. And at that time, he and we had tried to reach him, but I tried to reach him and my daughter did as well, in between that time. But the next time he attended, he put a no occupy notice on both of the buildings, or on the building on both suites. And then he also pushed for us to demolish the building. So our hope is that the building does not have to be demolished. I have spoken, I had a geotechnical engineer attend the property because Travis also explained to us that there was the possibility of something leaching into the creek from the cabins. The neighbor who did build the property is still living beside the property. He actually built it himself. He said that fisheries was involved. I don't have the documentation with me of all of that, but it is available. And there also is a picture that's available showing that the structure was not built in 2021, which was what both Travis and Mr. Bolton had explained to us, that the building was built in 2021. So.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
I mean, the main focus today is just to get more time to, if there are permits required, if it's not a grandfathered building, that we could get some extra time to either acquire legal counsel to help us deal with this, or to see how much is involved, because the emails that Tony Bolton had sent us, it's quite costly to go through all the processes that they're requiring now, including like the water testing and the geotechnical engineer. Fortunately, I know one, and he was kind enough to come and check things out. So I'm sure it's not a problem, but it is a big financial expense to jump through all these hoops. And our only goal is actually to keep the buildings as storage and not to demolish the building. It's one building, but 2 suites, but our hope is just to keep the building and not to have to demolish it, and to be able to use it either for personal use or storage use.
And not continue to use it as an Airbnb?
That's right, yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, we move on to unfinished business. Item 7.1, we have an expired permit on a single-wide manufactured home in Scotty Creek. We have a report from Building Inspector Bolton, and we do have a recommendation. Thank you, Director Ranta, seconded by Director Laird. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on this item? No discussion? All right, on the question then, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Sao, are you in favor, yay or nay?
Yay, in favor.
Thank you very much. No one opposed, that is carried. Item 7.2, we have 2210 Blackwater Road. We do have a recommendation. Director Ranta, thank you. Director Laird seconds that. Discussion. Director Laird.
Are we capable of giving them extra time to deal with this issue?
I'm going to ask Mr. Kraus to reply to that.
Yes, through the chair. So certainly the board can extend the timeline. Our recommendation always is that we put the notice on first, and then we're happy to continue to work with the owner. As soon as everything's rectified, we can easily remove the notice from title. So that's the safest route, but certainly the board can authorize staff to file a notice after a certain time period, but there is some risk there. What's the appropriate time period, and what happens if something occurs in the building in the meantime? So, but yes, you can certainly direct staff to do that.
Director Laird and then Director
Well-
Sarai.
What sort of timeline are we looking at for extension? Is it at the discretion of the board, or do we have a
Yes, through the chair.
recommendation from the staff?
Yeah, from staff, we recommend putting the notice on, and then we're happy to work with the owner. Then they're not under any time pressure. If you want to select a date, then it's totally up to the board. Again, I'd suggest not more than 30 days, because if this drags out, again, the risk is all in the regional district.
Director Sarai, then Director Getz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just question of staff. So when you say all the risk to the board, are you saying this resident does have any type of insurance on it?
This is the chair. I can't speak to their insurance, but certainly if they were to sell the property again, if that new owner didn't know about it, if something were to occur there and TNRD knew about it, the board knew about it, and we didn't take action, I think that's where the risk and the liability lies.
A supplemental? So I think I would support Director Laird's proposal in whatever timeline. I think we are aware of it and we're trying to rectify it. I think that would cover us if something unforeseen happened. I just don't know what the timeline. I think 30 days wouldn't be fair to the proponent, especially if she's got if they have to get evidence or paperwork from fisheries and that. I would be more inclined in a 90-day period.
I have Directors Getz, Middleton, and Onslow.
Thank you, Chair, and I think Director Sal, I think, is waving his hand up there too. Just looking at the timeline, the first site inspection where entry was refused was last summer. So we've gotten to almost a year later. So I think, I don't think 30 days is enough, but we need to put a realistic timeline on because it's been a year to this point.
All right, I mean, Mr. Kraus is advising that we put the section 57 on, which carries with it no penalties. And then also takes the pressure off by not committing the owners to working within a certain timeline, because of course, if they exceed that timeline, they have to come back to the board and ask for an extension. So right now, the recommendation as it stands is that we would issue a section 57 notice on title. And then I know that staff would be more than happy to work with the owners to help them come into compliance, whatever that looks like. And I don't think anyone is saying that involves definitely tearing down the building, but they'll be able to advise on the path to compliance. And then as soon as that is done to everyone's satisfaction, the section 57 comes off. I have Director Middleton, Director Onslow, Director Sal, and no, Director Onslow, no, and Director Hall. Director Middleton.
I agree I think this section 57 should be put on, particularly in light that the building is, or the property is for sale. So that's something in control. So I think that the section 57 should go on. It can be removed if the owner becomes compliant and they wish to have it removed. There is a process that they can do that. So I don't think any time frame or timeline is needed at all. Basically, we have to protect ourselves from potential damages should the property sell. And then I think the do not occupy, I think, needs to remain in place to ensure that a non-compliant property is not being rented out.
Thank you, Director Sal. I apologize for not seeing your hand before.
No worries. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, I have a few questions to staff. Just to confirm, having a notice on file, they can still sell if the buyer is willing to take that risk. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. Sometimes banks won't lend if it's on there, but if it was a cash transaction and the owner was willing to accept the risk, then it could transact. But the key is that the new owner couldn't say, well, we didn't know anything about it because it was on title.
Thank you. And second question is the infraction notice that I noted on the report that was made in 2021 before the current owner purchased it. Is a infraction notice, well, I gather that's different from a section 57 notice on title. Is an infraction notice also required to be disclosed as part of the disclosures in the real estate transaction?
Through the chair, yes, they should be disclosing if there's infractions. The previous owner should be declaring any bylaw issues that are occurring. And if they didn't, then it's a civil matter between those parties.
Okay, thank you for that. And lastly, from the report, there's recommendations 1 and 2. From what I gather from the presentation from the owner, there's a request for number 3 of how to deal with it, with leaving the structure and simply having some sort of guarantee to be worked out. That it would only be for storage use only. Is that number 3 option to staff? Is that feasible?
Yes, but it still requires a building permit. So we'd be happy to work with the owner to find out exactly what the use is. Is it a dwelling? Is it an accessory building? What is it? And then we're able to point them down the right path of the correct building permit application type and the work that needs to be done for that type of building. So obviously accessory building would be less onerous than a dwelling unit, but we'd be happy to work with them and try to find that resolution.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, right now we're just looking at the 57. Right now, simply protecting the, TNRD taxpayers because of any liabilities. It is at the end of the day, other taxpayers who's going to be shouldering that. Thank you.
Director Hall.
Thank you. Director Middleton answered my question. I think we should, look at this section 57, being that the property is up for sale. Staff has, done the homework on this, and I think at the same time, they're willing to work with the existing owner currently, so leaves us out of risk.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? On the motion then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. We move on to bylaw number 8.1, zoning amendment bylaw number 2841, 2024, provincially mandated residential density requirements, Bill 44. Recommendation that this be adopted? Director Laird, seconded by Director Sarai. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this point? On the question, all those in favor? Is
Aye.
anyone opposed? That is carried. Item 8.2, zoning amendment bylaw number 2847, 2024, a cannabis license application on Harper Ranch, Pinnetan Road. We do. Director Ranta, seconded by Director Morris. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? Any questions? On the motion, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That's carried. Vavenby Fire Protection Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 2854. We have a number of recommendations. Who was that? I heard a voice. I didn't see him. Director Getz. Who him? Director Getz, thank you. And Director Blackwell seconds that. Any discussion on recommendation number 1? All those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? That's carried. Number 2. Move to Director Thorpe. Thank you. Seconded by Director Smith. Any discussion on this? On the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Aye.
Thank you. That's carried. And lucky number 3. Move 3, Director Middleton, seconded by Director Ranta. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. And 8.4, back to Vavenby, Fire Protection Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 2857. Thank you, Director Blackwell, seconded by Director Ranta. Any discussion? All right, on the question, all those in favor? Is anyone
Aye.
opposed? That's carried. Number 2, Director Thorpe, thank you. Director Stankey seconds that. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried. And recommendation number 3. Director Sarai, seconded by Director Stankey. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. 9.1, Agricultural Land Commission application number ALR 232. Director Thorpe, thank you. Seconded by Director Smith. Any discussion on this item? No. All right, on the question then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Is anyone opposed? That is carried. We have the CAO verbal report, and since Mr. Hildebrand is not here, Mr. Vieira is very ably going to step into his shoes.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, happy to provide this report on behalf of CEO Hildebrandt. So we've had a busy month, in particular with public and community meetings. So first, the Black Pines water system. Happy to report that the Black Pines water system groundwater conversion project is now complete. So this is in electoral area P. The longstanding boil water notice and water quality advisory was lifted last month. Water flowing out of the taps now is dramatically improved, coming out of the new groundwater wells instead of the intake in the North Thompson River, which was the source of ongoing challenges. So the TNRD held a community meeting at the Whispering Pines Community Hall on May 23rd to update residents on the project, as well as to discuss the parcel tax and the commutation options applied to each property. That was the result of borrowing that was approved by referendum in 2021. So there was 6 TNRD staff along with Director Morris hosted that event with approximately 25 residents. Then the following week on May 30th, we hosted a meeting online for the community of Loon Lake. This meeting was online because many property owners in that area are not full-time residents. This meeting was also in relation to approved borrowing through a referendum in 2018 for the construction of the new fire hall. This meeting had about 40 residents participating online, and it was recorded and available afterwards as well. So as Chair Roden talked about in her announcements, the meeting was followed up that weekend or the following weekend with a grand opening celebration. And yes, even though I did not get a hot dog, I was able to have an excuse to stop at Desert Hills for a taco on the way home. So it's all good. So related to those 2 meetings, staff have been fielding many questions relating to the borrowing process for capital projects, and I suspect maybe many of the board members are hearing about it as well. So we can speak about this more in detail. If you want more information, you can contact myself or CFO Fox. But a little snapshot is that the TNRD has historically funded all approved borrowing for capital projects through parcel taxes. So this means that all properties, regardless of their assessed value within the service area, pay the same amount. We've also historically offered the commutation option, which is where property owners have the option of paying their full share of the borrowing instead of it going to parcel taxes. So that was the subject of these 2 community meetings and mail outs to these communities stating how much they would owe if they want to pay it all up front, or how much was estimated to go into parcel taxes. Even though this is our past practice, every time we do a borrowing, it's in a different community, so it's brand new, and most residents have not experienced it before. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that. Then a week after those meetings, we were up in Paul Lake at the Harper Mountain Lodge in Area P for a waterworks system meeting. So this is in relation to a private water system that has requested the TNRD investigate possible acquisition of that system. So approximately 20 residents attended that meeting to hear from staff and our consultant True Engineering about a feasibility study that the TNRD commissioned. And again, following a request from the owners to look into taking over that system. This was talked about in more detail at our Utilities Committee meeting yesterday, but just clarification for the board that any action the TNRD would take around acquisition follows our board approved sustainability and acquisition strategy for water systems, which essentially means that all the any water system we would apply needs to fully comply with already provincial regulations and is economically viable. Asset management training was already in the chair's update, so I'll just do a very brief second plug for that. It is on June 27th. Email went out, and within that email has the Zoom link for the training session. The TNRD boardroom will be available for those directors who want to participate. I say in person because you will be in person, but just to clarify, the trainer will still be online, so it'll still be on a screen. So either way, whether you're here or at home, you'll be the trainer will be on a screen delivering the presentation. And that meeting will also be recorded for those. A few directors have asked if they could take part in the training at a later date, and the answer is yes. Out of town board meeting, we've talked about this a few times. It is coming up quickly, August 14th and 15th. So dust off your cowboy hat, shine up your boots. We're heading on the old Merritt Highway for a tour through historic grasslands and to learn more about the endangered grassland ecosystem and unique geography of the area as we make our way to Merritt. We're going to overnight in Merritt, and following that will be our regular board meeting at the Merritt Best Western Hotel at 9 a.m. And following that, our tour will continue through the community of Lower Nicola and Logan Lake as we make our way back to Kamloops for the end of the day on the 15th. More detailed agendas will follow next month about that upcoming event. And finally, again, as per Chair Roden's announcement on the Parks and Trails Committee, I'll actually be sending out two separate, well, maybe I'll combine them into the same email, but another ask we have of the board, in addition to volunteering for that committee, if you're interested, is we will be sending out an email looking for local contacts related to existing parks, trail systems in your areas. We know that there's many sort of unofficial or quasi-recreational areas that are already actively used. And as the first step of this Parks and Trail strategy is to try take an inventory of what is out there in our region to try reflect that and see where things can be improved, further developed. So please watch for that email and just reply with any local knowledge you have, or even just connecting the dots with a local contact or contacts that are in your area or municipality. And that concludes my report.
We've already had two eager beavers reach out and say they are interested in being on the Parks and Trails Standing Committee. I will not name them to spare their blushes, but anyway, there is excitement. So if you want to get in on the ground floor of this, you better act fast. That's all I'm saying. We move on to 10.1.2 Savanaw Community Water System Reservoir License of Occupation and Right-of-Way Renewal. We do have a recommendation. Director Middleton, thank you. Seconded by Director Getz. Any discussion on this? Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. I was recently in Savanaw at the equipment place, Mr. Vieira, and I was told that there was a piece of ground that we owned in that industrial section. I'm just curious whether there's any accuracy to that, or is he referring to an easement or something like that? Do you think?
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair, I would have to look at the specific property. We do own a couple parcels that are dedicated park land as part of old subdivisions that occurred. And then this recommendation here relates to Crown land right of way to access the reservoir.
Any further questions or comments on this item? All right, all in favor? Is
Aye.
anyone opposed? That is carried. Item 10.1.3, 2023 Statements of Financial Information and Board Remuneration. We have two recommendations.
So moved.
Director Stamer, seconded by Director Morris. Thank you. Any discussion on the first recommendation? Any questions or comments? On recommendation one, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Director Ranta, seconded by Director Sarai. Any questions or comments on recommendation two? All right, on the question, all those in favor? Is anyone opposed? That is carried. For those directors who have just returned, we are just moving on to item 10.1.4, Fire Dispatch Services Contract Award. And we do have a recommendation.
So moved.
Director Stamer, thank you. Seconded by Director Stanky. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? No? All those in favor? Is anyone opposed? That is carried. Item 10.1.5, solid waste management plan amendment request, and I am going to ask Mr. Vieira to do a short presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I'm just going to summarize a bit of a presentation of what was already in the report, but I think it'll be good to set the stage here before there's further discussion on this matter. So this relates to the solid waste management plan amendment request from Timmins Good Earth Recycling. So this is the first step, step 1C in our plan amendment process, is receiving that request and it going before the board. So background information, clarifying a few things. Regional districts are responsible for solid waste management planning. Through that, they're required to have a regional solid waste management plan, which in that plan, it lists and authorizes disposal facilities in the region. So our plan presently includes 7 landfills, I believe. Any new landfill within a region must be supported by the regional district and then submitted to the minister as what's called a plan amendment in order for, or at least the part of a landfill operational certificate to be issued by the Minister of Environment. So an operational certificate will not be issued by the Ministry of Environment if it is not accompanied with a plan amendment. A quick highlight of the key points in the report in terms of the timeline. So in 2018 is when our newest regional solid waste management plan was approved by the board, submitted to the minister, and subsequently approved by the minister. 2023 was the first time we had a delegation from TIMIC to our regional solid waste management committee that introduced this project of the proposed landfill in Cache Creek. May 2023, the TNRD board adopted the solid waste management plan amendment policy, which was attached to this report. We did not have a clear process or policy as part of our 2018 plan. So that's why we brought this policy forward to the board last year. Summer 2023, Cache Creek, the village of Cache Creek and Ashcroft Indian Band submitted a request to the Environmental Assessment Office requesting that it be required and deemed reviewable under the Environmental Assessment Act. October 2023, the proponent submitted the plan amendment request to the TNRD for the first time that it went before the board on November 2023 is when that request came to the board. The board reviewed the amendment request, but postponed any decision on moving forward in our process until the Environmental Assessment Office made their decision about whether or not it was reviewable. So we were in the holding pattern there, and in March 2024, the Environmental Assessment Office did make a determination stating it is not reviewable under the Environmental Assessment Act. An excerpt of their decision was the permitting process through the MOE, which would be the plan amendment process and the operational certificate, can fairly effectively and appropriately address the concerns raised by the applicants. So that would be Cache Creek and Ashcroft Indian Band in the application and other First Nations, that an assessment of the project under the Act is not needed. So for that reason, now May 2024, the proponent has resubmitted the plan amendment request, which is now before this board to make a decision on how to move forward. A quick reminder of our policy is we have 4 steps: screening, then the amendment development, then the public consultation process, and then the approval process. In the policy, there's very detailed steps of how that works. Just want to highlight where we are on that process. We are still at the screening process on whether or not to move forward with initiating an amendment. Not that you could see this or expecting you to read all this, but this just highlights the 4 different steps in the process. And I just want to reiterate that as you look through this flow chart, or if you review the detailed document attached, through every step, the TNRD board will be faced with the decision whether or not to proceed to the next step, or whether to ask the proponent to provide further information and come back, or whether to deny the request and stop the process. So this is the first opportunity the board has to do one of those three things. And as if it moves forward, there will continue to be multiple times where the board will make that decision. Either move forward, ask for more information, come back later, or end the process. So because we're at step one of the process, the screening request considerations, I want to provide some guidance to the board of what should be considered at this point. So there's 4 key questions that are discussed in detail in the report. The first 3 there are fairly straightforward in this case, which discussed in the report. But what I want to elaborate on a little bit is the 4th one, which is the project considered to be within the best interest of the public? The first 3 questions, maybe I'll touch on quickly. Is it on First Nation land? The answer is no, it's on provincial land, and therefore it would fall within the authority of the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan, and therefore require amendment. Question 2, is it something already included in the plan? The answer is no, there was no discussion or consideration to have an additional landfill facility in Cache Creek when we consulted on the plan in 2018. So that's a very clear answer to no. Is it consistent with objectives and targets in the plan? The answer to that is yes, in the sense that it does not contravene any parts of the plan. It's not specifically identified that this facility is providing new or different services that we don't have. However, having another facility does not contravene anything that we're trying to do in the plan, which is essentially reduce waste generation per capita by increasing diversion and reducing waste to landfill. So back to the highlighted section here, is it within the public's best interest? So I'm not going to provide you with an answer on that, but I just want to provide a little bit of commentary. I first want to be very clear that there's no need for a new landfill to serve TNRD operations. So what I mean by that is the waste that's generated within the TNRD, including all member municipalities, is fully served, we're served well by the existing landfill capacity. And one may argue that we have additional landfill capacity within the TNRD. Whether or not this facility is required because of landfill capacity with province-wide or within the country is outside of the scope of the plan amendment process. So I don't think that's something that should be considered as at this stage or as part of the process, because that's outside the TNRD plan amendment process. So moving on, other things to consider. It is expected to impact existing other private waste facilities. So to clarify, these are privately owned facilities that were developed obviously prior to this proposal. The existing Campbell Hill landfill next door to the proponent, and there's an existing compost facility just down the highway owned by Halton Recycling. So back to the question, is it in the public's best interest? Then I'd advise the board to, I'm clearly stating there's no operational benefit or need. So any potential pros and cons or benefits would be related to local employment benefits, the overall economic benefits, so spin-off benefits of an additional facility, and working towards reconciliation with, as the proponent is a First Nation. And finally, I just want to clarify what should not be considered, what my advice is to not form part of your decision at this point, are things that have not yet been contemplated as part of the amendment process. So the level of public consultation should not be considered because there has been no public consultation yet, because we have not initiated a process as the TNRD board, which would require the proponent to do public consultation and come back to that board. So I advise that not be a factor in your decision. The environmental impact, also, there's not enough known information about the environmental impact for the board to make a decision based on that. Once again, that's part of the amendment process, that they would need to provide a detailed plan of how the facility would operate, the environmental protection measures, both to satisfy the TNRD board and the public consultation process and be able to present that info to the public, as well as that would be required as part of the development of an operational certificate as part of the Ministry of Environment requirements. Again, we have not at that step yet, so we don't have that information to make that determination. And basically any other factors or information that may come forward further along as part of the process should not be part of the decision right now. So it should just be based on those key questions I discussed earlier. So we did not provide a specific recommendation. We provided the two options that the board can take at this point. And I will end it there and open it for questions or discussion.
All right, well, we do have a recommendation with two possible outcomes. So would someone like to move a recommendation?
Option B.
That the Board of Directors direct staff not to proceed with the amendment process and provide the proponent with a letter outlining reasons for the decision. Okay, does it have a seconder? Director Stankey, thank you. All right, I will open the floor to discussion. Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Vieira, at the last presentation, the question was asked to the Timok people if they had tenure to the site that they're proposing. And I think that there was competing tenures. There was a lease of a sports club. There was a cattle company. Has that been resolved? And if it hasn't been resolved, would it be premature to be reviewing something where the proponent doesn't necessarily actually have access to the land? I guess it's two questions.
A good question. I'm gonna ask Adriana, may you are you in the room? Yeah, she's here somewhere. To speak to the tenure question. The second question, is it premature? I would say in this context, no, because the tenure, you know, as the proponent is going through this, if they don't have tenure, then they don't have a project. Our process is more related to considering the details of the project and then approving that going forward to public consultation. I think that question would continue to be answered and clarified because I don't think tenure has been secured yet, but I'll let Adriana speak to that.
Yes, through the chair, the applicant or the proponent has applied for a crown land lease for a period of 30 years, which if granted would give them exclusive use of the area. There are two current licenses of occupation in this area, which the province can authorize overlapping licenses of occupation. And so that would need to be resolved with the province.
Thank you. And so we're hearing that there's an application process going forward, but there are two competing interests that we have heard from already in the responses in the past that had been not supportive of the Timok proposal. And I'm just wondering if resolution of that crown lease and those situations would be appropriate before we embark upon saying to one proponent, yeah, we're going to go ahead and review it, when we've got two other interest holders that have said, no, we're opposed to it. Aren't we jumping the gun until that issue is resolved, which the provincial government can resolve? Because I guess the provincial government is the authority on all of these licenses and occupation. Isn't that a fair approach to all the parties?
I'll provide comment on that. It's a fair point. I think you could make the argument either way that simultaneously the board could approve this moving forward through the amendment process and the tenure issue being dealt with as part of that process. Or the board could wait and say they don't want to consider it until that's determined. Well, the current recommendation is to not proceed. That's on the floor.
My point is at the end of B, it says with a letter outlining the reasons for the decision. So would the reason for the decision being clarity of the status of the tenure, is the reason why we wouldn't proceed at this time, but we're not precluding proceeding once that issue gets resolved.
I would say that if the board feels that that's the reason they're making the decision, but that would be up for the discussion whether that amendment would be accepted.
If I may, it's not our land. So it is not we're not being asked to judge who gets tenure of that land. We are being asked to judge whether we feel we want to amend our solid waste plan to include another landfill. And there could be no other people wanting to use that land. There could be 100 other people wanting to use that land, but that is in some ways beyond our remit because we can't control that. It's not our land. We don't own it. We are simply to be looking at the landfill itself. And I mean, right now, the motion on the floor is that we do not proceed to look at it at all. We send them a letter saying, this is why we are denying your request. If we were to move forward, then we would be able to explore the idea of who else wants to use the land. Can these competing interests be accommodated? But I think what Mr. Vieira is trying to say is that it's not up to us who occupies the land. We're just being asked to talk about to judge on the landfill.
Just one comment on that comment. I'm not suggesting that we have any horse in this race as far as the land use. What I'm saying is that we're about to embark on a costly process to review something where it's not clear whether the decision on the land use is going to allow that to happen. And we have had two competing interests already express their opposition to it. So if I had applied for a waste plant on your property, you'd say, wait a second, I own my property. And I'm wondering if that's the case here. We've got two license holders and we've got a proponent who's asked for a crown lease. Our process is to review waste processes, and we're not sure yet whether the person that's asking for the lease has even got the property to do that. That's an expensive proposition until that question gets answered. And that's why I didn't want to deny the thing. I just wanted to say, here's something that needs to get sorted out before we would begin the process. But I've covered that. So thank you.
Mr. Vieira?
Yeah, I could just add in the clarification that in our policy that we would need to prove that they do have tenure as part of the final application process. So as part of step 2 in our process. So if this did move forward, that would be a condition built into that process.
Director Middleton.
Just for a clarification, when I'm reading this anticipated plan for use here would be as an organics and recycle facility. We're calling it a landfill, but is that really the right terminology? Would there actually be, unrecyclable and unorganic recycle materials buried on the property as in a typical landfill? Or is this really the addition of an organics and recycle facility as opposed to a landfill?
Yes, thanks for that question through the chair. To clarify, it's all three. It's a landfill, waste in the ground, and as part of that landfill, there'll also be a recycling component and also a composting component. It's the landfill component actually that requires a plan amendment.
I have Director Laird, Vice Chair Smith, and Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. According to it says amend and process and provide the promote with the letter outlining reasons for the decision. You read off some previous why we wouldn't be looking at it like it's repetitive. I think there's like in the previous presentation, there's 2 or 3 in there that would go along with not owning the land. So it wouldn't just be saying that we won't proceed until you can prove you have a lease on the land. The board is duplicating services that we already have. And I think there was 1 or 2 others in there that we could add to that letter. And I agree with Director Grenier, that it's basically we'd be saying they could proceed if they could outline our concerns before they proceed, because they are looking at a substantial amount of money. And I'd hate this board to get to the second or third and then turn them down. With all the money they've already invested in getting as far as they are, if we give them false hope and we get to the next stage and we turn it down, they've invested even more money to proceed where the board isn't going to support it. And I think the board members, that's one of the reasons we're elected, is to make hard decisions. And it might be the time to make that decision now and save everybody some money. It's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just reading through the report, I'm inclined to support the motion as well on the basis that I'm hearing that there's not necessarily a need for it right now in the area. I'm also hearing that it's going to negatively affect landowners in the area as well as, or has the potential to, as well as the users in the area. The economics could not be as great because they couldn't also negatively affect some of the other operations that are already there. So I feel like it almost one outweighs the other in a sense. And then I'm also hearing that there's a number of Indigenous groups that also may not be in support. So I feel like it doesn't go along necessarily with reconciliation either. So for those reasons, I'm inclined to support the motion.
Thank you, Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a question to Mr. Vieira. If our 2018 solid waste management plan is still in effect, when would we be looking at a review of that?
Thanks to the chair. Good question. We actually have a review plan. We typically review every 5 years. And actually our 2018 plan didn't actually get approved by the minister till 2019. So we're looking at a review next year. We do every 5 years, we do a review. Every 10 years, we do a full renewal of the plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I had quite a few things that I had listed here as I wanted to bring up, on this file. I think we're fairly familiar with some of the things that have been occurring on this. I kind of disagree a little bit with the staff recommendation about not discussing public consultation, because from where I sit, it doesn't look like there has been any at all, when if this was my proposal, I'd be looking for support, and it doesn't seem like there is a lot of support, but if that's not part of the process, that's fine. But I believe that if our plan doesn't look for additional requirements for this in the TNRD, I don't know why we would continue with this process until at least getting to a review of our solid waste management plan, and then maybe at that time looking at any additional capacity.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Director Ranta.
There we go. Certainly I agree with Director Smith's perspective that as Mr. Vieira pointed out, this could result in some reconciliation, but don't forget that one of the significant opponents of the project is the Ashcroft Indian Band. So I don't know how reconciling with one band and then creating animosity with another is going to improve the relations with First Nations in the region. In the report, it states that there's not significant operational need for additional landfill in the region. So our landfill in Cache Creek started in 1989 and it closed in, I think, 2016. And then a second iteration of that landfill was opened up in about 2018 or 19, and that's operating now. And it's not getting as much waste as it used to get. And the reason for that is Metro Vancouver has chosen to ship a lot of their waste down to the United States. And so I don't know where the waste would come from for another landfill in Cache Creek, it is the right place to have a landfill operation because it's one of the driest areas of the province. So you don't produce an awful lot of leachate and negatively impact the environment. Right now, we're drawing methane off the landfill and producing electricity with it, which is sold to BC Hydro, and that produces revenue for Waste Tech. But what it basically says here in the report is that there could be additional revenues coming to the TNRD as a result of this landfill, and that's because of a waste import fee. But there's only so much waste, and you know, if the Bonaparte Band is able to find waste in the Lower Mainland or elsewhere to bring to the Cache Creek landfill or to bring to their landfill in Cache Creek, that will negatively impact the waste that's presently going to the Cache Creek landfill, so that it'll reduce the revenue for waste import to the Cache Creek landfill and maybe increase the revenue from the Timmick landfill. There's lots of opponents that are referred to as affected parties of this proposal. And certainly the village of Cache Creek derives a certain amount of revenue from the landfill and has since 1989. And we would like to continue to have that revenue and the employment that the landfill creates. At one point, we had 120 people working at the Cache Creek landfill when it was accepting 500,000 tons of waste a year. And we would like to get back to that number if we can, but there just isn't the waste available to achieve that input. So I would encourage my fellow directors to stop this process now. I recognize that it's a little bit distasteful for some people to say no to a First Nation, but in the interest of the people that have supported the landfill in Cache Creek since 1989 and before, I would suggest that we don't need a competing landfill in Cache Creek at this time.
Thank you. Did anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, just a reminder that the recommendation that is on the motion that is on the floor is that the Board of Directors receive the revised Step 1B screening level amendment request dated May 29, 2024 for the Timmick Good Earth Recycling Facility, and that the Board of Directors direct staff not to proceed with the amendment process and provide the proponent with a letter outlining reasons for the decision. All right. On all those in favor of the motion,
Aye.
is there anyone opposed? Thank you. I have Directors Rain, Blackwell, and Lepso. All right, the motion is carried. We move on to item 10.1.6, Local Government Infrastructure Planning Grant, Lewis Creek Bulk Water Fill Station. We do have a recommendation.
So moved.
Director Stamer, thank you. Is there a seconder? Vice Chair Smith, any discussion on this? Director Stamer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the report is self-explanatory on this proposal. I want to thank staff for working through that. As you can see, there's a $10,000 grant that's being applied for through the TNRD, and then the remaining $5,000 would be split between the District of Barrier and the TNRD through the Solid Waste Management Fund. It's something, as it says in the report, that we do not have a bulk water station in the valley. There's an opportunity to provide potable water from the Lewis Creek Industrial Park water system for the Eco Depot, not only for potable water for the employees, including proper washrooms and shower facility that is a requirement through WCB, but also for fire suppression at the site if we have, you know, an unfortunate situation where the recyclables, you know, like the yard clippings and that sort of thing ends up catching on fire, then we would have an additional water supply there. So maybe Mr. Vieira, if he has any further points on that, I think this is something that's desperately needed, and hopefully we can build it in the next 12 months.
Thank you through the chair. Since you asked, I'll provide a comment. I agree with what you said. It'd be a benefit to our solid waste operations having the bulk water there. But now that my hat includes more than just solid waste, also from the water and utility side of things, we are receiving, and we have received many inquiries, calls from concerned TNRD residents who live outside the district barrier who are having challenges with their wells running out, and they're having to haul in potable water from far distances away. So it'd be a benefit to TNRD residents as well.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. Item 10.1.7, Spring 2024 Search and Rescue Grant Applications. You have a recommendation. So moved, Director Thorpe, thank you. Seconded by Director Laird. Any discussion? Director Laird.
I was just wondering when the last time we looked at increasing the amount of donations we make to the different search and rescues. I think this has been a number that's been here for a long time. Maybe we could possibly look at, you know, when we do our next year's budget, we could look at maybe increasing. We all know how costs have gone up, and I think the most amount reason $10,000 seems to be around the average. A couple of them or more, but it would be interesting to have a look and see if we could increase the amount given.
Thank you. Mr. Vieira?
Thank you. Through the chair, I don't know the answer to when the last time is we reviewed it or increased. I know it has been stable for some time, but absolutely it's something we can look as part of the budget process. We can consult with each of the groups to kind of see where we're at and what the need is. And if we make any changes, that would come through forward in the provisional budget process starting next year.
Thank you. And we do have some left over from this intake that the search and rescue groups can apply for in the fall if they so desire. Okay. All right, on the question, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Invasive plant control contract amendments. We have a recommendation, fairly large one. Director Houghton, seconded by Director Hayward. Thank you. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor? You're muted.
Aye.
There we go.
Aye.
Thank you. No one is opposed. That is carried. We have a report for recommendation only about some investigative licenses are being, or some investigative procedures taking place to see about licenses on Crown land. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Kraus on this? Questions or comments? Director Houghton.
These two proposals, one in the Trap Lake area and one in the Westfold area, how far along is the process? And these properties are probably under Crown tenure for other purposes. Will those folks be notified right away of this proposal, or how does all that work?
Through the chair, yes. So the province has an obligation to let the other Crown lease or license holders know. It's a very early stage. They simply send us referrals with, frankly, very little information in them. And so it's just at the investigative stage, but it's really important that we share this with the board just to keep everyone up to date as to what will be coming, so you don't hear about it in the news or in other processes rather than through us.
And supplement that, would it be right on, say, my part, because they're both in my area, to let the owners or the other tenure holders who I think I know, let them know that this is in a process right now, so they have heads up, or when will the tenure holders that already have the land be notified?
Through the chair, yeah, I don't know exactly when the province notifies or if they've done so already, but this report is public. It's on the agenda, so you're more than welcome to share this report.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Item 10.110, sole source purchase of fire engine. Director Houghton, seconded by Director Morris. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Cheap at half the price, as they would say. Good deal. Very nice looking fire truck. All right, on the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Aye.
We have the Accessibility Advisory Committee appointment recommendation here.
So moved.
Director Stamer, seconded by Director Sarai. Any questions or comments? Are you congratulating Director Hayward or commiserating with her? I'm not sure which. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, on the question, all those in favor? Anyone
Aye.
opposed? That is carried. We have annual grant reporting for information only. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing as how CFO Fox is here, ready, willing, and eager to take your questions. Just kidding. No, she is. Does anyone have any? Yes.
I was just going to give a quick introduction. This is something that we've wanted to do in the past, but it's been a little bit. It's kind of just an information thing, just to kind of give everyone a state of the nation and see where we're at for last year, give a brief overview of some of the different funding streams that we get and how it looks when you compare, say, province to the federal government and smaller groups, and how much money we get from each group. If anybody has any questions about that, happy to answer.
Thank you very much. I know it's a question that we get from residents quite often. How much in grant funding have you received? How much are you applying for? So thank you for breaking all this down and giving us all the information. Any questions or comments? All right. We have a correction, electoral area M&N Fire Protection Service Area map correction. There is no need to act on this. We are simply accepting this for information. The records will be amended accordingly. Correct, Mr. Vieira? A nod. Thank you very much. Item 10.114, 2024 capital budget amendment. Back to the fire departments here. We have a recommendation. Director Blackwell, thank you. Director Ranta, second. Any discussion? Questions or comments? On the motion then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is carried. We have the building permit activity highlights report for your edification. Anyone have any comments on that? And then also for your reading pleasure, we have the electoral area directors meeting from May 16th. And we do have a recommendation arising out of the policy committee meeting under 11.2.
Move the recommendation.
Director Bass, thank you. Seconded by Director Thorpe. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Anyone
Aye.
opposed? That's carried. We have some information correspondence regarding 70 Mile House. Thank you, Director Smith. I know former Director Watson will be happy to hear this as well. Look forward to the results of their study later this year. Is there any new business? I have Director Houghton and then Director Grenier. Director Houghton.
Yeah, I like to congratulate the two merit areas working with the city of Merritt electoral areas on their fire protection. And I was wondering, since the area that is on the area just south of Kamloops, and there's a couple of major roads, part of it's in the city accounts, part of it's not. And since we got all the city some of the city directors here, would there be any appetite, because I've been asked by some of the people on Long Lake Road and Rose Hill Road, would there be any appetite for making a similar contract? Is there an appetite with the city of Kamloops Fire Department to give fire protection to the non-serviced area in the Knutsford area if we could create a catchment area? Because I know the city of Kamloops was great during the Rossmore Lake fires and brought their structural protection unit out, and I went and thanked the deputy fire chief for that. I just don't know what the procedure is, and since some of those people in the area have heard the good news about Merit, they've asked me, and I said I'll bring it up under new business today.
Through the chair, I could provide some comments on that. Thanks, Director Houghton. I guess a few background items. As far as I'm aware, there has not been any recent discussions with the city of Kamloops about any interest or ability to provide fire protection to cover TNRD areas like we do with some of our other member municipalities. So by all means, we can re-engage kind of on a staff level with the fire chief and the fire department on that. Yeah, as discussed, we have similar agreements with as we do with Merit, with the village of Chase and the district of Barrier and the village of Ashcroft and the village of Clinton to provide fire protection area to specified TNRD residents. So to answer your question around the process would be if the city of Kamloops department is willing and able to provide the protection, then we would have discussions around what the cost would be under a contract basis for the city to provide that service to the specific TNRD properties. And then we would go through a public assent process to those property owners in that specified area, and they would have to approve through public assent to be taxed for that new service. So it'd be creation of a new service, and the service is provided through a contractor being a municipality.
Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. I had the pleasure of attending the FCM conference with a number of City of Kamloops directors, and I just wanted to report, since I reported to our Water Works Committee meeting, that the gist of the FCM initiative seemed to be we want a greater share of the tax revenue that's collected from Canadian taxpayers. There was for local governments, municipalities and regional districts, our primary source of revenue is through property taxation. And the gist of the conference was that we can't build the infrastructure that we need to build or maintain with just property tax. And so, and that was the day we got there, our Voyant alert system went off, and it was the city of Calgary's water main blowing up. So it sort of underscored that. Because the FCM has been doing this work for a couple of years now, they appear to be making some headway with the feds and provinces to say, cut us in on a share of the revenue, quite apart from property tax. You'll be seeing in the next agenda a motion from our water services, our utility services, to pursue that with the assistance of Mr. Kelly. When we look at our infrastructure, whether it's municipal infrastructure or regional infrastructure, we know how hard it is to make ends meet with just property taxes. So this is something that I think we can get on board. And for the folks that are going to FCM next year, it might be worth thinking ahead of that conference and making some kind of specific or additional things that build on that. So just wanted to report that, since I was the only EA director attending at that one. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other new business? Director Middleton.
Not really news, but just opportunity to thank the TNRD for sending us to FCM. It was a really valuable learning experience. I think it was well worth attending. mean, when anyone else gets the opportunity to go, they certainly should be. But just again, my thanks to the board and to the TNRD for sending us.
Director O'Connor, I remembered your last name. I'm sorry.
So thank you, Chair Rose.
Senior moment.
Yeah, so during the break, I placed an invitation in front of everyone here. We know 3 years is coming up very soon since the Lytton fire. The original intention of that event was to recognize the various fire departments that responded. And so many of them, of course, are from your communities. So if you can make it, we'd happily have you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? We move on to notice of motion. Director Graham has a notice of motion that he would like to read out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A very large amount of money from economic development funds was transferred to EA director's discretionary funds. And we would like more time to use those funds to make our community a better place to live, work, and play. So the notice of motion would be, whereas on January the 18th, 2024, the board supported and recommended from the meeting of the EA Directors Committee regarding one-time use of the economic development funds to be either refunded to the tax base or transferred to the EA grant and aid. And whereas the electoral area grant and aid policy states that the unused funds may not be carried forward to a subsequent year. Be it resolved that the board approve a one-time exception of the EA grants and aid policy permitting the funds in the amount not to exceed the amount that was transferred from Economic Development Fund to be carried forward to 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will be revisiting that on July the 18th. All right, question period. No, no questions. All right, I move that a closed meeting take place following the regular board meeting in accordance with the Community Charter sections 91A, labor relations or other employee relations, and E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the board considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Director Stamer, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Sao will give you a couple of minutes to sign out and sign back into a new meeting, and everyone else 2 minutes to do whatever you feel you need to do.